Yo guys, how's it going? I'm Phil. I am a photojournalist, photographer, video editor, transit user, and city lover. And today we are going to be looking at not only the MARC growth and transformation plan in part, but we are also going to look at my fantasy map that I made on MetroDreamin that includes not just the MARC, but an homage to the MARC coach bus system that I think we should have in Maryland. Now, it is loosely based off of a few different things, but for the most part, the inspiration comes from GO Transit in Ontario, Canada. The GO Transit network has tons of double-decker buses and coach bus services, as well as a robust regional rail transportation arsenal to serve the people of the Golden Horseshoe, the Toronto area, and I think we could really benefit from something like that, not just in Maryland, but in the DMV as a whole. So this will have some sort of realistic elements to it in respect to what's actually in the MARC growth and transformation plan. And then there will be the fanatical things that I want to put in there. So what we're going to do is just get started here. On the map, on MetroDreamin, you can see that I have several categories here. Maryland Area Rail Commuter, MTA BRT Link, MTA Express Bus Link. Now, these two are essentially the same thing. You'll see later on, as you can see, I have them hidden here. And that will be because I am really trying to do this whole thing where I tease what's coming up next in these maps. So the first thing we're going to start doing is the rail connections. We're going to see where the bones of that network lie, and then we'll get into the buses and see how the buses would connect to everything. So first thing we're going to do is this little thing called PCC here. What does PCC mean? Penn-Camden connector. So in the MARC growth and transformation plan, the Penn line and the Camden line need a way to connect to one another. And the best way to do that is to do this. Okay, so here we have the Penn-Camden connector right there. And what this does is essentially take trains from the Penn line here, that's West Baltimore Station, and route them down, over and around on these old, abandoned, partially still in use rail corridors that CSX owns. And the train, a Penn line train, let's say, that can't terminate up here, you want to run trains to Camden Yards, would then run up over here, down and around through southwest Baltimore here, and empty out onto the Camden line tracks where it can then terminate at Camden Yards, where currently it can only terminate at Penn or continue on to Perryville. What this allows as well is trains to board at Baltimore Camden Station and then go on the Penn-Camden connector to the Penn line. So let's say that CSX is, being real jerks about the timing of trains. Well, CSX doesn't really control the tracks up until past the opening of the Howard Street Tunnel. There's some separation there. And this Penn-Camden connector, at the very least initially, is going to be very important. So I believe in the MARC growth and transformation plan, they say it'll sort of be a thing within the next 10 to 15 years. But by 2050, ideally, what we have is in the next 25 years, as this is 2025, we will have more than that in my sort of fantasy world of Maryland area rail commuters. So keep that in mind, that the Penn-Camden connector is sort of a short-term fix for my longer-term plan here. This is actually going to happen. They're studying it currently. They're doing everything that they have to be doing right now to get this on, the way to be delivered for commuters. This will make our lives easier. Moving on to, and we'll keep the Penn-Camden connector up, but moving on to the meat of the map here, the rail, which is pretty vast. So as you can see here, this is the entire Washington metropolitan area. The DMV, the Delmarva Peninsula, and as you can see, there's a lot to talk about on this map. We can start at the fringes, but what I want to do is start in the meat of it all in Baltimore City. So what we're going to do is we are going to zoom in without turning the world topsy-turvy. And as we can see here, there is a lot going on here that doesn't exist currently. So let's address the elephant in the room first and foremost. So obviously here's the Penn-Camden connector. We can see how that connects the Penn line to the Camden line. But first and foremost, I want to address this, the MARC Harbor Beltway. What is the MARC Harbor Beltway? Well, here is the crux of this plan of mine. Basically, this is Camden Yards here, and this is Lexington Market. Now, to the untrained eye, you would say, oh, they're utilizing the Howard Street Tunnel. That's great. It just got renovated. We can expand the Howard Street Tunnel. No. What this is, and we'll turn on the railways portion here. This is the Howard Street Tunnel. And this purple is the light rail. This is the Howard Street Tunnel. And as we can see, I'm not using the Howard Street Tunnel. Why? Because I want way more than just one line to be able to utilize that corridor, and I want nothing to do with CSX as much as I possibly can. So this is what the plan would necessarily be. So as you can see, there's these little tracks here. That is the Metro Subway Link. We're not sending this underground to share tracks with the Metro Subway Link. What we're doing is elevating the MARC through downtown Baltimore City on a viaduct. So what would that look like? Essentially, and we'll turn on the satellite mode here, you have the trains terminating at Camden Station. Now this isn't an exact sort of, because we wouldn't be destroying the historical Camden Station for this. But essentially, you would utilize sort of this corridor here to go around, almost like you would see with the Chicago L trains, and up Utah Street. You would have a station here at Lexington Market, which would connect to the light rail station and the Metro Subway Link station. It would continue up past Mount Vernon and sort of, as we can see here by the medical center, it would sort of go over top. Now, why am I having this? And again, we wouldn't be demolishing a ton of buildings here, but why am I having it sort of loop on that land right there? Well, as you can see, this is the Maryland Department of Health and Mental Hygiene. This is state-owned property. So we can do a lot more with this land than we necessarily would have with eminent domaining private stuff. We want to make this as realistic as humanly possible and as achievable as humanly possible. So we go up here, cross Howard Street, and end up at Mount Royal Station. Now, this would be a scenario in which we would add tracks and an above ground platform to Mount Royal Station. This would not be a scenario in which Mount Royal Station will no longer be accepting freight. Obviously, CSX utilizes Mount Royal Station to get freight through the Howard Street Tunnel and then up and around and into the rest of the Northeast. That's not what we'll be doing here. What we'll be doing here is continuing to elevate those tracks. And so what will happen here is we have these two branches, and we'll get to this branch here in a second, but what's happening here is we are essentially going to be building a twin overpass over 83, kind of the same thing that the light rail, and I'm using the light rail corridor to illustrate this in this map, but realistically this would be another sort of branch over top here, and it would merge with these MARC tracks at Penn Station. Now, we are officially on the Pennsylvania Railroad now, and what we are doing here is we are continuing on to North Broadway. If you remember from my Metro Subway Link video where I had a map, a fantasy map that I did on MetroDreamin, you'll notice that I had a subway stop at North Broadway. That's because in the original MARC Growth and Transformation Plan, in the Maryland Region Rail System Plan of 2002, they had a North Broadway station because they envisioned a Penn Line station being built there. And so we're going to do that. We're also going to build one here in Middle East, which is basically right at this big, huge gulf of undeveloped land here on Milton Avenue. And there's a trestle right here, a bunch of housing, very dense neighborhood. And essentially, you're just utilizing the Pennsylvania Railroad and utilizing the sidings that they had already planned on utilizing for more of a true regional Baltimore-focused rail line that we currently do not have. So, as we continue to move on, we're going to notice something. The Pennsylvania Railroad continues on. That's that red line here. That's the MARC Penn line. And I did that so that we could really see the difference between the MARC Penn line and the rest of the system that I'm creating here. This right here, as we can see, is a real offshoot, but it's really no longer in service. This is sort of the Baltimore Greenway version of the High Line that they've been trying to build for a while. It was initially utilized as a way to protect, like all rails to trails, was utilized to protect the right-of-way so that we could actually use it in the future. So we're using it in this future. We are going to take this, as we will zoom out, past Greektown and down to Canton. Now, this station in Canton is a lot closer to the industrial district than I would like, but to illustrate what I wanted, it basically would be sort of right off of Haven Street and closer to the Camden crossing, sort of shopping center. Now, we have another branch here that we will get to, I promise. This one, though, continues. Now, obviously there's all this industrial land. This is not going to be a sort of elevated viaduct or a true elevated viaduct through this area. But as you can see here, there is this space here, right there, right through here, that currently is not utilized. Now, what we can do, and what I've done here is a tunnel situation, but what realistically could be done is we could put a train through here and just elevate it over the harbor, down and around and through. But you run into the ships here, which is why I chose a deep bore tunnel solution, I guess. So you would start the tunneling probably around here, and then you would have to basically get it all the way across the harbor. Here are the other two tunnels that we've already dug. Now listen, I'm not an engineer, I'm not an engineering expert, so you can tell me if this is not in the comments, you can tell me if this is not feasible, but realistically I think that a deep bore tunnel starting somewhere uptown and continuing on physically is possible for regional rail vehicles. So what this will do is it will end at the Locust Point loop here. It's a sort of a freight rail loop around Locust Point, and we'll continue on to McHenry Row in South Baltimore, go up and around. This is a maintenance facility in South Baltimore, Riverside, right by Riverside Park here. It's a maintenance facility, and it would pass the maintenance facility. There's already MARC trains parked there. It would go over and around, and see this little trackage here from Camden Yards, over, down, around, through Fort Riverside, and over here. We already utilize that trackage for MARC trains to get from Camden Yards to where they're stored overnight. at that facility in South Baltimore. Basically, we would just be utilizing them a lot more, or building sidings for us to utilize it a lot more in the future. This is the Fort Riverside station. Again, in my Metro Subway Link video, where I talk about the fantasy map that I make, there is a Fort Riverside station. This would just be a connection to that service. And then back up again to Camden Yards. So that is the loop. That is the Harbor Beltway, as it were. It's this little orange circle here, and it would just connect everything in Baltimore City in a very convenient circle. Now, what rolling stock would be used for that? What I'm realistically thinking of is something along the lines of the DART Silver Line that just came out in Dallas, Texas. So multiple units in general would be perfect for this. That's what I'm thinking, basically, for this whole map, sort of a remake of the fleet, give multiple units. If we're gonna run more trains, we're probably gonna want more multiple units anyway. So I think that's a good way to go about doing that. And on the Penn line, you would keep trains as they currently are with the Siemens chargers and all of that, because those can hit a higher threshold of speed that you're going to need for the Penn line in general. So that is the Harbor Beltway. Moving on to what I like to call the Dundalk Westminster line. So Dundalk and Westminster. As we can see, Westminster up here, all this snaking freight track that's currently being used that you would ideally build sidings for so that we could use it for regional passenger rail, goes to Reisterstown, Glendon. Now, in the original plans for a regional rail system and for basically what they have around DC currently in Baltimore, they utilized this corridor. Actually, they utilized this one up here. But basically, Reisterstown, Glendon, that was a stop on that map. Stevenson University, that's a stop that I would make on this map. And as we can see, we're basically just utilizing, and we'll turn on the railways feature, we're basically just utilizing an already existing right-of-way. That would stop at Stevenson University. There's the Owings Mills campus there, and it would snake down to Owings Mills. This right here is the Owings Mills Metro Subway Link stop. So basically, you would have not a true transfer, because that's about a 9 to 10 minute walk, but you could sort of start to see the buildings of a community around these stations already, more than there already is. Obviously, there's been some transit-oriented development taking place in the Owings Mills Metro Subway Link station, in the parking lots and stuff surrounding it. We would just continue that development. I know development's a really scary word, but I'm not talking about a bunch of private companies buying all of your houses and turning you all to mush. I'm talking about, building state-owned affordable housing on most of this land to actually get people to be able to utilize it in an affordable way. So, as we snake down, we're basically following this rail line, which is right next to and runs basically parallel and sometimes overlaps the Metro Subway Link tracks, which means that there's going to, much like the Brunswick line does with the red line around DC, there's going to be some overlap stations, and this is one of them, Reisterstown Plaza, a huge, huge node in the greater Baltimore area's density map. This is a hugely important place for people getting to and from downtown Baltimore City, and that would be a huge place for them to transfer from the Metro Subway Link to this form of railway. Now, obviously, this would be in conjunction with the map that I had already previously made about the Metro Subway Link, so it's not just going to be a redundant regional rail line down through the portions of West Baltimore and upper Western Baltimore County. We'll continue through West Baltimore and go to Liberty Heights, Baltimore City Community College. Again, the video that I did on the Metro Subway Link map also has this being utilized. It would basically just parallel it, but not as often. There would be a stop at Coppin. And in this scenario, we'll go to satellite mode. As you can see, there's already a rail corridor here. And we'll zoom in and you can see that it's just disused. and we'll utilize that, reinforce it, utilize it. Runs underneath Benelow Street, past Carver, and right onto these tracks here, which currently is the Pennsylvania Railroad. Now, this is the mouth of, and this is Upton, so there would be another station connecting to the Baltimore Metro Subway Link. Upton, and this area here is very important because this is the mouth of the current B&P tunnel. This up here is a stop that I'm putting at Penn North. In an ideal world, they are going where they're building the Frederick Douglass Tunnel, which will be sort of this thing here. You would want there to be some sort of connection to the Baltimore Metro Subway Link. I have these two stations here, not as definites, but as sort of complements to one another. You either would put an Upton station here or a Penn North station here. I don't know which one you would choose. Personally, I would choose Penn North because it's much more of a choke point for human beings getting around. But Upton would work too, especially with the fact that it would no longer be holding that much Amtrak travel and Amtrak traffic. So you could be better able at least, to put some sort of a station there, whether above ground or below. And then it would snake through what's already the B&P tunnel. And we'll look at the whole line here, Dundalk Westminster line. And you can see that there's two branches here. One that goes this way and one that goes this way. This line here is the Manchester-Canton line. This line here is the Dundalk-Westminster line. So basically what you're seeing here is these two branches are going to have utilization of this corridor together for better frequencies, and then they're going to split off up by Penn Station. The Dundalk-Westminster line is going to basically cover this corridor on the Pennsylvania Railroad, Penn Station, North Broadway, Middle East. It's going to come down and hit up Canton right here. And this is that branch that I was telling you about earlier. It's going to come through here. These are Norfolk Southern tracks here. And again, we'll go to the railways button. These are already railways that have been laid. Not that we're going to just utilize old decrepit tracks. You would have to lay new ones and reinforce and all of that. But the right-of-ways are there, and there's ways to, utilize the relationships that the MTA has with these certain freight rail carriers to be able to do things like this. It would be very costly, and they wouldn't be working with you as much. But in a fantasy world, you would be able to do that. So we're going to be able to do that here. And so what this train would do is it would stop right here. What's this? As we can see, this is Amazon. This is Browning Highway. And if we turn on the satellite, we can see that at the Chesapeake Commerce Center, this is the BWI Amazon Fulfillment Center. This whole campus here is a huge hub of employment locally. As we've talked about before, the 163 bus that goes from West Baltimore MARC station down through the tunnel and onto the other side of the Baltimore Harbor utilizes this sort of area to get people to and from work and from Dundalk into downtown Baltimore City. In this world, we will be utilizing these tracks in order to build a MARC station there. And ideally, you would say to an Amazon, hey, you're going to help pay for this. Obviously, I'm not a f***ing idiot, and I know that they're not going to do that just because. But it's certainly something that theoretically could happen. And you want to be able to exhaust all of those options, not saying that those aren't being exhausted, but just saying this is a creative environment, so we're getting creative here. This stop here, as we move further down, is at Willow Spring. This, as we can see, is North Dundalk Avenue, and this is getting into sort of the more dense part of southeastern Baltimore City and southeast Baltimore County. And we follow it down past Foundry and into Solars Point. Now, Community College of Baltimore County, this is an oversight by me. Now that I think about it more, obviously there's a bunch of people's backyards here. I am constantly thinking of the NIMBYism when it comes to these maps, and I know that that's not what I should be thinking about in a fantasy world, but I do like to make these about as realistic, I guess, as humanly possible, even though this is fanatical. But you know what? We're gonna do this together right now. We're gonna build a station. We're gonna build a station right at Foundry. We're gonna do it right here. Why? Because I think that's a good idea to service Dundalk High School and CCBC Dundalk. So let's do that. Let's type that in and we'll call this Foundry/CCBC Dundalk. Let's put a little hyphen right there. Bingo, boingo, Bob's your freaking uncle. All right, so that is how we're going to do it. Pass here, go to Solars Point Road, and as we can see, we continue on through Solars Point. And again, this is already existing track. We're not cutting through highways, we're not cutting over them. This already exists. This is a right-of-way that we can utilize here, and this is Cove, Lynch Cove specifically. Now, in a less fanatical world, we would terminate the line there. Why? Because this bridge right here, as I've been told before, this swing bridge here would need 100% replacement. But let's remember, we're building another tunnel under the Baltimore Harbor. We're ambitious here, aren't we? So we're going to reconstruct this bridge, and in a way that will allow it to be high enough for there to be sort of enough space for boats to get through. Now, from what I can tell at least, this area here, Bear Creek and all of that, isn't going to necessarily need room for giant oil tankers. It's going to need room at most over the top for sailboats and larger vessels, yachts, that kind of thing. So you wouldn't need to build basically a bridge that's super, super high where the grade would be tough for a train, but you would need to build something with a lot of clearance and that isn't fracture critical, as we've seen with the Francis Scott Key Bridge, RIP. As we continue through here, we'll get to our final stop, and I was so tempted to put one here because I love Key and I think they're great. Key Brewing. So if you've ever been to Key Brewing, you know those train tracks that kind of snake back there. These are the tracks we're utilizing. They already exist. We would snake down all the way down here on existing trackage to Trade Point Atlantic. Now, there's a lot of development going on down there, lots of shops, lots of housing that's being built in areas around there. And on top of that, it's a major employment hub. I think that is a huge plus for a station being here. And as you can see, we've got a little connection here, and that will be for later on. As we can see, this is a pretty comprehensive line here. We're going to zoom out and get sort of the crux of it. So that's the Dundalk Westminster line. Now, we'll get to the Manchester Canton line. This trunk here gets a lot of service, and justifiably so. There's a lot of people living there, and a lot of them don't own a car. And they need to get in and around Baltimore City much easier and with a lot more people per trip. So, this would start up here in Manchester. Come on, Eagle Ridge and Hampstead Gill. Now, elephant in the room time. We're going to have this conversation because I do not want there to be comments talking about this. If you're from Manchester, if you're from Westminster, if you're from up that area, and you come into my comment section talking about how you don't want people from West Baltimore to have access to your neighborhoods, go f*** yourself, okay? This is a fantasy map, fantasy world thing that we're living in here, and people already have access to your neighborhood via cars, via buses. The fentanyl crisis was going to come to Timonium whether the light rail brought people there or not. Sorry, rant over. That's just something, I've seen that a lot in comment sections, not just on my own videos, but in general on Twitter and on, X or whatever it's called. Okay, I get it. You're scared. But creating a boogeyman in your head does nothing to actually protect your family. It's bullshit, and you got to get over yourself. So anyway, Manchester-Canton line, basically this covers most of what we were already talking about with the Dundalk-Westminster line. And remember that split I told you about here? So now we're going to be utilizing those tracks south instead of north. And so it will sort of merge with the Circle line a little bit, go down to Lexington Market, go to Camden Yards, giving a direct connection to Camden Yards for people who live in Northwest Baltimore, Manchester, Westminster, Hampstead, Reisterstown, and it will continue down these tracks that the Circle line goes, down to Riverside, down to McHenry Row, down to Locust Point, across the tunnel, and into Canton. And the trains will terminate, quote unquote, terminate at Canton, where, because we're utilizing the same rolling stock here, they will either direct themselves back up and become Circle line trains, or they will reverse and go back up the line. So that is sort of the idea here with this, is we want there to be a lot of redundancies, because redundancies when it comes to transit are very beneficial. Now, this one is a big one, and you're going to need a lot more than just general Maryland state support for this. This is utilizing the North Central Railway. This is a shout out to my buddy Nathan, who was adamant that I include this in this map, and well, buddy, we're doing it. This is the North Central Railway, which utilizes both at the same time the corridor that the light rail utilizes and an old rail to trail through both Maryland and Pennsylvania that initially connected Harrisburg down to Baltimore City. So that's what we're going to utilize. As you can see, though, this is very windy and very tough to navigate. Initially, and I'll be very honest, I had a bus using 83. But the traffic on 83 sucks. So realistically, all this curving and nonsense here, I don't know that that's going to be nearly as much of a hindrance, especially if we're not running a ton of trains per day from Harrisburg down. But who knows? Anyway, it would start here in Harrisburg, and you're basically, again, we're utilizing a lot of railways that already exist. There's a rail bridge here that you would need to utilize and create new on and off ramps for. But basically, you're utilizing existing infrastructure to snake down the Susquehanna River into New Cumberland. And that would be sort of the first official stop. Obviously, Harrisburg is where it would terminate. Then you go to New Cumberland, then you snake all the way down past this Waco Junction, Mount Wolf, into Emig Road in Emigsville, and then you're getting into the York part of this. This is York Somerville Station. Now we're getting off of track that's already been in use by freight. Now you can see there's no more pink lines. So what is this? Well, I'll tell you. As you can see, there's track that goes this way, right? And this is on the map. But there's also track that goes this way. But it doesn't show up on the railways map. For whatever reason, it's not there. And the reason that it's not there is because this is no longer in use by freight railroad companies. This is a historic railroad trail. And this is York's sort of main bus station. So we're going to utilize that as the York Transportation Center. We'll pull out here and we'll go back to railway mode. And we will sort of get out of that view. And as we can see, this continues down here to Kings Mill. And now we're sort of back on some tracks that are recognized by this map, but not really. And it continues to snake down here, past the creeks, past the country clubs, and if we'll pull out here, you'll see there's a lot of ground to cover between York and Glen Rock, down by Shrewsbury. And there's a lot of snaking around. Now, one thing that I wish that MetroDreamin had was an ability to see between different stations just how long the timing would be. I don't really know, but based on these curbs, I can't imagine that it would be very quick. So essentially, Glen Rock, then New Freedom, right on the PA Maryland line, and then you're snaking all the way through here. That's Moncton, that's Glencoe, Phoenix, Paper Mill Road, and then Cockeysville. Paper Mill Road, as we can see, is not a railway, but it does follow, and we'll go to satellite view here, the NCR Trail. And that's the rail to trail right there. So there would be a station here at Paper Mill Road. There's already a parking facility here for the trail. You would just utilize that as well. And then there's all this housing here that could benefit from that access. And then this is sort of where the trail ends here. So in order to connect what's currently the light rail to this trail here, you would need to sort of move out and basically build like an overpass of sorts, or have a grade crossing, whatever you want. And that would lead you here to Cockeysville. You keep following the trail down until you hook up with what is currently the light rail along Beaver Dam Road. And your next stop would be Lutherville Transportation Center, which already exists. And in my Metro Subway Link map video, I utilize that in various different ways with subway connections and with bus connections. That would be part of this. Now, essentially what you're doing here is you are adding track to the light rail. So you are going to be sort of expanding that a little bit and creating a system in which you utilize that right of way all the way down to Mount Royal Station. Now, we'll go to the Harrisburg-Camden line. As you can see, this line will terminate at Camden Yards. Basically, this will be a way to utilize existing infrastructure to get people from Harrisburg and York down to Camden Yards in a relatively frequent way. This says an hour and 40 minutes. I wouldn't be shocked if it was closer to 2 hours, but you get the idea. So that line terminates there. We're going to do the Penn line next, but just for the northern portions here. This is pretty self-explanatory. Right now, I just kicked my tripod. Oops. This is pretty self-explanatory here. That's Wilmington, that's Newark, that's Elkton, that's Perryville. Currently, the Penn line will terminate at Perryville, but in this reality, which will be our reality at some point in the next 10-15 years, the Penn line will terminate all the way at Wilmington, Delaware. Why? Because eventually they want to be able to connect via regional rail with both SEPTA and with MARC, this sort of area here. So right now, SEPTA's regional rail goes to Newark, Delaware, basically the University of Delaware. But this section here between Newark, Elkton, and Perryville has no regional rail service, despite the fact that Amtrak runs trains along that corridor. Elkton does not have any service to Wilmington and has no service to the rest of the state of Maryland. This would provide that. Again, much like the Penn-Camden connector, this is happening. This is gonna happen. So this isn't just some fantastical idea that I have. This is gonna be reality at some point. To sort of continue on with the Baltimore area here, we have the Camden line that's current. Basically what we would do with the Camden line, though, in this sense, is we would not terminate the trains at Camden Yards. We would continue the trains on the Penn Station so that they could then join the rotation, either become a Circle Line train or a Harbor Beltway train, or become a Dundalk Westminster train. basically give the opportunity for them to be able to maneuver without having to use the Penn-Camden connection, but still retain it as an asset to be able to utilize if need be. So getting that out of the way, we see this little section here of orange tracks. Now, I'm going to say right now that the yellow tracks are tracks that sort of have a agreement with a freight rail carrier, that I don't envisage that we will be owning those tracks anytime soon. The orange are tracks that are owned and operated by MDOT and the Maryland Transit Administration. The red are tracks that are operated by Amtrak. So basically, it's just to illustrate the different sort of, it breaks it up and it makes it more visually stimulating, but it also sort of breaks up the general ownership and sort of illustrates in a way that is easily explainable and easily seen just how complicated something like this is to create. So, as we can see, there's a station here at Westport. This will be doing the same thing that the NCR line was doing from Harrisburg down to Canton and utilizing the light rail's right-of-way. We'll be stopping at Westport. We'll be stopping at North Linthicum. We'll be stopping at Linthicum. But we won't be continuing on to BWI. Instead, we'll be continuing to Glen Burnie and to Marley Station. And if you haven't caught on yet, we're utilizing the B&A, baby. We're bringing it back. The Baltimore and Annapolis Trail, if you've never ridden on it, it's beautiful. But it is a rail to trail, and I can't emphasize enough that rail to trail was created in order to save the right-of-way for our ability to take them and use them for future rail connections. It's not just to have a bike trail, it's not just to have nature, it's to protect the right-of-way from a freight company and from the government from being able to make it into a giant highway, basically. So again, it's basically the same thing that the tracks were utilized for to build the light rail that we have right now. This would just continue that. So we would have Glen Burnie, Marley Station, Pasadena. These are all park and rides currently. Severna Park, Arnold. Well, Arnold's down here, but this is Anne Arundel County Community College. This one would require some sort of, building up of a station platform and stuff like that. Well, they all would, anyway, this would need to be built up a little bit more because there's really no connection to the community college. I am imagining some sort of a pedestrian bridge situation like you see kind of at Morgan State and at other schools in the area. And then obviously Arnold here, and then a termination of the train at Annapolis, Winchester. Now, why not continue on to Annapolis proper, to historic Annapolis? Well, initially I did, but then I realized that this area here, right here, and right here, that would get you to Annapolis proper is not land that is in the grasp of the state of Maryland. As a matter of fact, the Navy owns that land, and I cannot imagine a reality, even in my fantasies, in which the Navy would play ball with something like that. So we are going to terminate the trains there. Keep in mind that the bus connections that we will talk about will have something to do with this. In addition to trains going from Baltimore City down to Annapolis, they will also be utilizing the same right-of-way. And I thought it would be silly not to do this, where you can have MARC trains terminate at BWI Thurgood Marshall Airport, realistically from anywhere, but obviously we have the light rail going north and south. The light rail would not continue onto these orange tracks down here. What would happen is MARC trains would then join up here and they would terminate at BWI Thurgood Marshall Airport for people who live in Anne Arundel County and who live in Annapolis. That is what I think a vital connection that people down there don't currently have right now. And it would alleviate the ability for them to have to drive constantly to the airport and basically drive anywhere up that corridor. As you can see, that's sort of the crux of the Baltimore area as we know it. We're going to do the Eastern Shore now. This is the Annapolis Ocean City line. This one utilizes a lot of rail to trail stuff, and this is the fanatical one. This is the one that I have always wanted to exist, that I have heard from so many people that they've always wanted to exist. So you know what? This is I'm taking my license to be absolutely insane with this map, with this here. As you can see here with the NCR line, it's very windy and oh my goodness, how is that going to be fast? I tried to negate that basically with this. So we're not going to be following 50 the whole way. See how windy that is? I don't think you're going to be able to sustain a very high speed on a train like that. So we're going to be utilizing the wide swaths of farmland. And yes, there will be some eminent domain in this. Unfortunately, I don't like doing that, but that's what we're going to do. There will be eminent domain in this, but again, it will be as painless, I think, as possible. I don't know. So we'll give it a shot here. Annapolis, Winchester. So that is where you will pick up from. You'll go to Sandy Point State Park. Basically, you'll be following 50 the whole way. There's been a lot of talk about building a third span of the Bay Bridge. I don't know that it's actually going to happen, but what I would love for there to be is a rail connection on that bridge. And I'm not just talking about rail connections for passenger rail. As you can see, based off of this line is yellow. What did I say about yellow lines? I said that the yellow lines had freight deals with them. So what would we do here? We would utilize leverage of the state, building a third span of the Bay Bridge to include freight rail on that bridge. Not just freight rail, but passenger rail as well. And so we would be able to give freight companies an access to this area and rent it to them on a case-by-case, time-slot-by-time-slot basis that they can utilize without having to own the tracks themselves, which is the key. And they would have access to Kent Island and Queenstown and Chesapeake College and all of these areas that people need to make deliveries to. And additionally, if someone does want to make the connection from Centerville down to here, they can do it themselves. Anyway, these stops would be, that's the method to my madness, basically, is what I'm trying to say. Annapolis, Winchester, Sandy Point State Park, Thompson Creek Road, Chesapeake College, home sweet Thompson Creek. Easton, historic Easton. So this is 50. We would deviate from 50 here. This is an old rail trail here, an Easton historic rail trail. We would follow this all the way down into historic Easton, Goldborough Street. See this Easton rails to trails? Now this simply continues down further south past Mecklenburg and just kind of terminates down, further south into Talbot County. What we're going to do here is continue the train either in its own sort of right-of-way or above or below ground through this area here on Dover Road and connect to this hydro corridor here. Now I say hydro corridor. What hydro corridors are is essentially an electricity line corridor. Those are corridors that people have been telling transportation engineers and stuff to build on because they're already publicly owned land, blah, blah, blah. Basically, that would be what we'd be utilizing here for the most part. I used to work on the Eastern Shore. I worked there for a year, so not terribly long. But when I was over there, I was a journalist, and I respect the hell out of all the farmers over there, especially the chicken farmers and all of the chicken houses that they have, and they're a huge part of our economy. I tried so hard in this map to prevent even one chicken house from having to be seized or eminent domain because I respect the ever-loving hell out of those people. And I don't want nearly as much land to be reclaimed for this project. Even in my fantasy, I don't want to do that. So This will cross the Choptank River here on its own elevated bridge, and we'll continue through here. And this is a lot of forested land. Oh, you know, I did say I tried. I don't know if I can't tell if that's a chicken house. It might be a really big one, but if it is, I am so sorry. Ideally, you'd want to move like all the way over here, but we're trying to keep this as straight and narrow as humanly possible. Past Mount Zion Cemetery here. Again, I'm trying, you're avoiding all of this housing here. Sort of over this way, try to avoid the developments, and continue on past Overbridge Road, over Westview, Harmony Road, continuing down. You get the idea. We're continuing on to Federalsburg. Why are we continuing on to Federalsburg? Because there is a hydro corridor here and an old rail to trail. See this? Railroad Avenue. Why does it say Railroad Avenue? Because there used to be a railroad there, and there currently is one there that freight utilizes. Now, it's not a very robust freight situation, but there are tracks there. It is a right-of-way. So we would stop at Federalsburg here. And we would continue, instead of continuing on this line here, we would be making our own route here. Now, why? Because, as we can see, we want to make a stop in Seaford. I can't make a stop in Seaford if I follow this all the way up and then go down. That would be kind of dumb. So what we're going to do is we are going to continue to utilize hydro corridors. We'll go to satellite mode here and regular land, and just continue through as straight as we can. And here's Ross Station Road. Now, why is it called Ross Station Road? Because there's a railway there. This is a station in Seaford, Delaware. It's in western Sussex County. And as you can see, if we zoom in further, there is a railway here. This will be a connection point. To what? A future video. That's what it'll be. And so will this, here in Laurel, Delaware, and Delmar, Delaware, and Salisbury, Maryland. Those will be in a future video that I'm going to do about Delaware Regional Rail. It's the state that I think has the most potential to be able to do something like this, and we're going to discover that in a future video, I promise. So Salisbury here, this station, and it's where I used to live when I lived on the Eastern Shore. Satellite view, scroll all the way through here. This is North Salisbury Boulevard, North Salisbury Elementary School. There's a little rail spur here, and that's where you would put the station. Kind of right by the fire department. But basically, if you continue down here, there's the S-curve, and you'll basically be in downtown Salisbury. That's Evo, the Evolution Brewing Company. That's sort of those tracks there. So that's the right-of-way we'd be using, but it would be sort of an offshoot over here. Now, what am I continuing on to? This is an old rail to trail. That's right. Yes, this is an old rail line. It no longer exists as it once did, but it continues on and will be the crux of our system. So you can see here, there's a little spur there, and here some sidings. Whoa, hey now. See, the interface on this with a laptop is a little tough. I don't even know which way I'm turned. Okay, so Parsonsburg and all of that, that's where it would continue on to. But as you can see at Zion Church Road, it stops. But if we go into satellite mode, we see that the trail does not stop. So the right-of-way continues through Parsonsburg, where we would rejoin I-50, or US 50. I'm an idiot. It's not I-50, it's US 50. Willards, that's where our next stop would be. And then we would join 90 as opposed to continuing on 50. So Ideally, I batted around this a lot. And I know a lot of people that live in Ocean Pines, and I think Ocean Pines would be a better place to put a station as opposed to Berlin and West Ocean City. Why? I don't know. I think I just decided that it would be easier instead of continuing to route through 50. Tell me I'm full of shit. I don't know, but realistically, maybe this works out better. I don't know. What's the transit connection in Ocean City, Maryland? The transit connection in Ocean City, Maryland is the bus that goes up and down Coastal Highway that people use a lot when they're down there. That would be one of those things. Ideally, realistically too, what I was thinking about with this as well, and that's probably one of the reasons I put the station here instead of further down, is because this is sort of an equidistant way to have access to the Delaware beaches and to the Maryland beaches. And I think that that's something that people would utilize more than just something that goes down to South Ocean City. So anyway, that's that line. We're going to get into the DC section of things here. Not much has changed. So utilizing the B&O, and we're going to do this kind of quickly here, utilizing the B&O here at Cumberland and Hancock Airport and Duffields and Martinsburg, that's all planned already. Obviously, it already goes to Martinsburg, but going to Hancock and going to Cumberland is already a plan that they're going to put into place at some point in the future, kind of like the Wilmington extension on the Penn line. So the Brunswick line is going to go all the way out to Cumberland at some point. Amtrak already does that. They already utilize that right of way. That's just what it's going to be. Now, what I'm going to do here with Frederick, obviously it doesn't stop at Point of Rocks, so we're not going to. And we are basically going to follow all the way from Frederick, and we're going to call this the Frederick line. Now, the Frederick line does something that the Penn line also does. What does it do? It goes to Alexandria, Virginia. So the plan with the Penn line, and I would assume the Frederick line, at least in my world, that's what we're doing here, is going to go south into Northern Virginia to past Arlington and into Crystal City and L'Enfant Plaza, and eventually reach Alexandria Union Station. That is something that is already planned. There will not be trains terminating solely at Washington Union Station anymore. So basically that's the crux of it. As you can see, based off of these stops here, Frederick line is, for the most part, an express. The Brunswick line is going to be the local, and the Frederick line will be the express. But there's a lot of affordable housing in Frederick, and there's a lot of places like Urbana and all kinds of others up in that region in Frederick County to live for people who live in DC, because honestly, DC is really not going to build much more housing. They have height restrictions and stuff, and basically it's not nearly as much of an option for people as it would be if it was a city like New York. So you need to be able to get people to DC from Frederick in a timelier fashion than you currently do, and that would allow you to do it. The Camden line obviously hasn't changed. The Penn line down here obviously hasn't changed, but this is something that has changed. This is the La Plata line. Southern Maryland is not being left out of the equation. As we can see here, we have La Plata, Willowgate, White Plains, Waldorf, Patawoman, Brandywine, Rosaryville, Marlton, and Upper Marlboro, which is one of the bigger stations in this network. Now, Upper Marlboro is a place of demand. You could just drive into DC, but that would be freaking miserable. So, this gives you the option to go to Bowie's Health Center, and then to Seabrook, and then to New Carrollton, and then to Washington, D.C. Union Station, avoiding traffic in the crux of Washington, D.C. Now, this would also be helpful for people, in La Plata and Waldorf and stuff. That is the rail portion of this. We're going to do the buses now. The BRT link. What's the BRT link? It's this thing here. Pikesville, Old Court Road, SSA, Westview, Frederick Road. What is this? This is the Baltimore Beltway, a coach bus service, sort of BRT service that utilizes existing highways and state roads and state highways to connect to current transit options. It would start basically at the Towson University Towson Town Garage, and it would continue through different portions of Towson Town Center, Goucher, Cromwell Bridge Road, Perring Plaza, all of that stuff, through Parkville Blair Road. White Marsh Mall, this would be a big one here. This is actually one of my favorite stations here. The White Marsh Mall station, if you remember my Metro Subway Link video, there is a White Marsh Metro Subway Link station that would connect with this, essentially. And you would also be able to utilize that station to get coach bus services to places like Philly and New York and Boston and all of that. So Martin State Airport, that would be a bus connection right there. There's a MARC train station there. This would continue through Middlesex, Essex, North Point Boulevard, and it would continue down North Point Boulevard until it gets to Trade Point Atlantic. There would be a connection to Trade Point Atlantic for people who work down here and live up in these areas, because that is a huge part of it. And the traffic that we see, a lot of it is people trying to get down there for work, trying to get down to Broning Highway, trying to get down to Dundalk, to Amazon, stuff like that. They live in these areas up here, and we need to give them better options to get around. And yes, buses don't sound sexy, but buses do a lot, and coach buses are comfortable, and that's what we would be using. Let's continue down to Cromwell, North Linthicum. North Linthicum, it would connect with the light rail there. I tried to put in as many transit connections as humanly possible. So Lansdowne Station here, that's kind of where the CityLink Yellow connects up with it. Frederick Road and obviously Westview over here. Essentially, you get the idea. But this would use current construction for transit. Now, up in these areas up here, on 695, there's a lot of construction happening right now. What you would need to do is do sort of like what they do in Seattle with the buses that utilize the highway there, and utilize that large median space to create station platforms where people can, with pedestrian bridges, where people can either park, live, whatever, on one side or the other, and utilize the bus to get downtown or get around. So that would be the crux of this. This is basically just the connector, the ring area. We already have the ring road built. We might as well use it in a way that utilizes much more comfortable buses. I see all the time in Toronto, the buses that they use, I think those are great. I think those are perfect for what we need here in Maryland. And I think that it would go a long way to utilize that first, see what the viability of sort of a ring rail mode is in the suburbs like that, and then build something out. So that's the BRT link. And we're gonna keep that highlighted because we're gonna bring in the pink lines here, which are the sort of radial buses that are the spoke to the wheel. So we're gonna start up in Belair, Maryland, Belair Main Street, the Harford Mall, Fallston, Honeygo Village, White Marsh Mall. What is this one here? Belair to BWI. From White Marsh to BWI, express bus service. Yes, I said it, express bus service. So, one thing that we don't have a lot of right now is a way for people to get from portions of the county to BWI quickly and without driving. So, what people can do is they can park at the White Marsh Mall, at the park and ride situation it's already there, it's already set up, and take a coach bus service that comes every 10, 15 minutes and take it to BWI. That would be so clutch. When I talk to people who live in Harford County, one of the things that they say is, you know, we have the train that goes through Aberdeen and stuff like that, and people don't really use it all that much. It's not about that. It's about having another option. People that live in Bel Air oftentimes don't even utilize the MARC Penn line. Obviously, that's exaggeration. But for the most part, if they want to get into Baltimore City for any reason, they drive. They don't take the train. They don't need to. Because by the time they drive down to a station like Edgewood or Aberdeen, they could have already been in Baltimore City. So in Bel Air, Hartford Mall, Fallston, all that, these stations will all be sort of just regular bus stops that people can drop off, pick up, all that stuff. White Marsh Mall is the big one. That's the one where they can transfer to the more circular line, or they can take it all the way into downtown Baltimore City, or they can take it all the way into BWI Thurgood Marshall Airport. And we also have the Bel Air to downtown line with stops at both Camden Yards, Shock Trauma, and West Baltimore MARC Station. Now, imagine you live in Bel Air, Maryland, and you want to go to Camden Yards for an Orioles game, but you don't want to drive because parking fees are a pain in the ass. You can get there in the comfort of a coach bus. This is a situation in which I think we could really utilize coach bus service to sort of coax the people of Harford County into utilizing transit. Because right now it's basically like taking a horse to water and it doesn't drink anything at all. So at the very least, give them an option that they might find palatable. Annapolis to New Carrollton. This is one of my favorites. Utilizes 50, utilizes the park and rides along 50, Davidsonville, Bowie's Gateway, all of that. Ends at New Carrollton, MARC Station and Metro Station. And remember when I said that it would go to Westfield would go to Winchester and Annapolis? Well, that's that connection there. That's the train depot right here. That's the bus stop. And it continues down Ritchie Highway over the Navy Academy Bridge with a stop at the U.S. Naval Academy. And then it makes a left and goes to St. John's College. And then it makes a right and goes to Dock Street in Annapolis. That is your bus connection to historic Annapolis. If you get off the train, you just hop right on that bus and take it down. And if you're on the MARC and you've already shown your ticket to the conductor on the MARC and it's still active, you can utilize that ticket like we do currently with the system that we have to get onto that bus and take it down to historic Annapolis without having to drive. Now, why do I care so much about giving service to Annapolis? It's because the one thing that people do when they go out down there, instead of finding a friend's place to crash at that lives in Anne Arundel County, they get in their car and they drive up 97 drunk or buzzed. And it is a huge, huge safety risk. And we need to negate that by having proper transit connections. It's a human safety thing at this point, to have the proper transit connections for people to get down there and have their fun and not kill anybody on the way home. Not only would it connect you to the Naval Academy, not only would it connect you with certain areas, DC and all of that, but it would get you home safely. Now, as we can see, there's another one here. This already exists, from what I understand. It's sort of a Columbia BRT situation. We would just be doing it in coach buses, basically. So Silver Spring, they're at the red and purple line station, Four Corners, Burnt Mills, White Oak, all that stuff. Continuing up through Fulton, Skaggsville, Maple Lawn, in through Columbia, Columbia Town Center, Meriwether Post, Broken Land, Ellicott City, Patapsco Valley State Park, and Westview, and that would continue on to West Baltimore MARC Station. Again, this already, for the most part, exists. And then here we have the BWI Baltimore Frederick bus. Now, there's a green one over here. We'll talk about that. This goes to the Frederick MARC Station, utilizes 70 with a coach bus, a very comfy one, and express bus to the I-70 Park and Ride, down to West Baltimore, and we'll bring this one up again, down to West Baltimore, and then it continues on to Russell Street and the stadiums. So basically getting from Frederick to the stadiums, you can now do it in a one-seat ride on transit. How cool is that? And then you continue, oops, wrong one again. Oh my goodness. You would continue on from Russell Street to BWI Thurgood Marshall Airport. So basically you have a one-seat ride from Frederick to BWI. That, I think, we're trying to do the missing links here. Now, this is all a frequency thing, the colors. That's why they're different colors. So the blue one would be the most frequent. Buses probably every 10 to 15 minutes. The pinks would be buses probably every 15, 20, 25 minutes. The green would be buses every 30 minutes to an hour. Now, there's only one green line, and it goes from Cumberland to Hancock to Hagerstown, which has thus far been neglected, to Frederick. It's not going to go all the way to Baltimore, but you can connect with the buses that'll go to Baltimore. Basically, giving the west to east connection to Baltimore City that the train already fulfills from Hagerstown, or from Cumberland down the B&O that Amtrak uses to DC. So basically giving them an option to go to the Baltimore area without having to take the train to DC first and then go up. So basically that's the crux of it. That, in a nutshell, is my map. So let's bring everything up here, the PCC and the MARC line. There it is. See, now we have the whole thing here. This is what I think we need. I do not foresee a universe in which Pennsylvania, Delaware, Virginia, Maryland all come together and create this system, unfortunately. But there are certain aspects, as I've talked about, that are going to come to fruition eventually with the MARC Growth and Transformation Plan that they just came out with. Obviously, that is contingent on state funding. This whole situation here would cost a ton of money. I'm not even going to begin to think about how costly it would be. They give a cost breakdown in MetroDreamin, but realistically, it's not nearly as good of a cost sort of determiner as it could be. I tend to think that something like this, despite the fact that it is incredibly expensive, is incredibly necessary. Why did I include the buses in this? Because I think the buses is something we can do right now. I think it's something that we can convince ourselves to do right now. And we're going to go out of full screen mode here. We're going to scroll down to this area here. Now, this is all those buses every 15 minutes, whatever. This is the bus fleet. Van Hool CX 45s, 400 of them, $250 million. Van Hool TDX 250Es, 600 of those. The difference between these is one is single level and one is double decker. So for a total of $500 million, you have a fleet of 1,000 coach buses that you can utilize for basically 15, 20 years. That's pretty good money for value there. Drivers, you're looking at, if you hire, 600 or so, you're looking at, if they make $80K a year plus benefits, you're looking at around $52 million a year in salaries. That'll add up, but realistically, that's a lot cheaper than straight up train service. I did a bunch of fare breakdowns here. This basically assumes 200,000 passenger trips a week, 20% rate of fare beating or attempted fare beating, and what you would charge per person. Obviously, these would be subject to all kinds of variables, but you get the idea. Like I said, MTA owned tracks, Amtrak owned tracks, freight tracks. The frequencies, basically every 15 minutes, for the most part on the better, bigger lines, every 40 minutes for BWI to Canton Yards. This is all sort of in the MARC Growth and Transformation Plan. I didn't copy and paste the language, but for the most part, these timetables are based off of what's in that document. These are the, broken down. Weekdays off peak, weekdays on peak. Again, you can go on MetroDreamin, you can check out this map. It is called the Maryland M.MTA's Maryland Area Rail Commuter by 2050. Highly encourage you look at it. You give me some notes, leave some comments, branch off, fork off the map, make your own. I think that's great. I love when people do that. And as we can see, the rolling stocks, the reason that I have 22 Siemens Chargers, CS44s, is because we have 22, 23 diesel locomotives currently in service that are the, basically, I'll show them right now on the screen, those that carry a lot of MARC trains in the Brunswick, Camden, whatever. All of this cost does not include electrification. I would love for there to be electrification. But in a world in which we currently live, where freight constantly is kicking and screaming about electrification, if we have to use diesels, these are the ones that I would like to use. Bombardier bi-level passenger rail cars, 32 of those. We have a lot of bi-level cars. These are just the ones that they use for Go and for MetroLinks out in Los Angeles. They're Buy America, kosher, so easy to use. The Stadler Flirts, diesel multiple units and electric multiple units, those are also Buy America kosher. They're being purchased, like I said, by cities all over the country for certain things, particularly in Dallas, for both TexRail, or they're very similar to the ones that TexRail uses, and for the Silver Line. So again, this is just sort of a rough guesstimate, but all of that, now I didn't go into like engineer salaries and stuff in this like I did for the bus drivers, because that's a little bit more convoluted. But essentially what you're looking at is, for the price of $1.5 billion, $2 billion, an order of magnitude more rolling stock for both coach buses and trains, regional trains, than you've ever dreamed of having. And then staffing it appropriately, all of that. Again, none of this is cheap. It takes a lot of money, but it is important that we understand just how necessary a lot of this stuff is. Like I said, the buses, that's something that we can do relatively soon. I think, a lot of that infrastructure is already built. Even if you're not utilizing station platforms, you can build those station platforms. You can build those pedestrian bridges. Those are not nearly as expensive as, say, creating an entire rail network. So again, it's something to think about. It's something to, sort of get your critical thinking going. If you are a Maryland resident and you know just how difficult it is to get things built in this state or in general, then this should tell you everything you need to know, that even in a fantasy world, we have to be realistic. So again, I love this tool. I love this map tool. I do know that Subway Builder exists. We'll be trying it at some point, but I do love MetroDreamin. I have a lot of maps on MetroDreamin saved on my profile, and I'm going to be making a lot more videos like this. I love doing these, and so I'm going to be making these videos. Again, I know this is like 90 minutes long, but you don't have to watch the whole thing. If you do, I guess thank you. But basically, I thoroughly enjoy these videos. I'm going to be doing a lot more of them. There's going to be videos, like I said, on the Delaware passenger rail coming soon. There's going to be one on sort of a DC WMATA fantasy map sort of situation that does involve the Purple Line pretty specifically. So we'll get into that. I have maps on deck from Philadelphia to Montreal to Toronto to Chicago. So I'm going to be making videos using MetroDreamin for, next year. There's going to be probably 4 or 5 coming along. So that is what I have sort of in the can, and we will continue to make these videos. We continue to do this. I enjoy doing this a lot. I think this is a great sort of off-script way to engage with people who watch my videos normally, but in general. And I can't thank MetroDreamin enough for this interface. It's great. I so thoroughly enjoy it, and I can't wait to make more videos using it. It's a great tool, and I hope to see you guys in the next one, not just on these MetroDreamin videos, but also in the videos that I make on other things. My Teachable Travel series, I just did one on London. It got a lot of really good reception, and I'm really happy and proud of that one. I have videos on Dublin. I have videos on Dakar and Senegal. I have videos on Boston. I'm gonna have more coming again in the next year, and I can't wait to do more of these. I think these are so fun. And as always, I appreciate you.